Hello BSS, welcome back to my channel, or if you are new here then just welcome. Hi, my name is Brenda. I do paranormal videos here on my channel, so if that is something that you are interested in, please consider subscribing down below and turn on your post notifications so you do not miss when I post another video like this one. Now with all of that being said, let's go ahead and jump right into today's video. Alright guys, so based on the feedback from my last video like this, I feel like you guys really like the true or real scary stories that people have to tell about their experiences in Mexico. So here I am reading some more to you guys, and I'm excited to see what else there is in store for these stories on this website. So without further ado, let's get right into it with story number 1. This happened when I was around 12 years old. My mom took my siblings and I to visit her mom in her hometown in Mexico during our summer break. As soon as we got there, we were told not to wander close to the neighbor's house. Strange things seemed to be happening there. Apparently, the 16-year-old that lived across the street was possessed. My grandmother actually used the phrase, "has the devil in her." It started with the girl, I don't remember her name, hearing somebody whisper. Then she claimed she was able to hear footsteps that followed her everywhere. She stopped eating, sleeping, and every morning would find scratches and bruises all over her body. The priest had been called and he had blessed the house several times, but it didn't seem to stop. Her parents had to send their other children to stay with the grandparents because they were too scared to stay in the house with her, as she was beginning to have violent/manic episodes. Some people in town said that when they walked by that house, they felt uneasy, and some even claimed they saw shadows and heard strange noises. My cousins were scared to walk by there and would rather go the opposite way and walk around the block, just to get to a store that was 2 houses down from that house. By the way, this house was across the street from my grandma and 2 houses to the left. 2 houses left of the house that was right across the street. Hope that makes sense. I'm not gonna lie, I was scared too, but I also had this morbid curiosity. Every time we had to leave my grandma's house, I looked that way and stared. I don't really know what I was hoping to see. One morning, I woke up to the grown-ups talking about what had happened across the street during the night. Apparently, a big stain appeared overnight in one of the walls, a stain that looked a lot like blood. They washed the stain with soap and water and painted over where the stain was. By that evening, the stain was there again. They went to get the priest and once again cleaned the stain and prayed while the priest blessed the house and threw holy water at the wall. By morning, the stain was back. The word around town spread and people had gathered and formed prayer groups. It seemed they were praying nonstop. One group of people would leave and others would show up, all carrying rosary beads. My cousins, siblings, and I were under strict orders not to get close to that house. My grandma thought we might all also get possessed or something might follow us home. Of course, us being kids, we decided we wanted to go and look at this blood stain on the wall. So off we went, hiding behind other people so our grandma and mothers wouldn't see us. There was a lot of people and not everyone fit inside the house, or they were afraid to go in. There was a lot of people just outside the entrance. As we got closer, we heard a girl yelling as if in pain. We also heard growling, but I'm not sure if the girl was also making these noises. Everyone there was praying the rosary in unison, but you were able to hear the girl's voice crying and asking for help. Then she would start yelling, screaming, and you would hear growling. At this point, my cousins, my brother, and my sister had turned back in fear. My sister grabbed my arm and tried pulling me back, but I had to see for myself who was making those noises. I pushed my way inside the house, and what I saw next, I will never forget. I saw a girl tied with ropes to a banister of the house. She looked to be almost just skin and bones. I don't know what I was expecting to see, but It shocked me and I gasped. For a second there, it almost seemed like she heard me and turned my way. I swear she was staring straight at me and smiled. I was frozen in my spot, unable to move. Then I felt someone pull me back so hard I almost lost my balance. It was my grandmother that was dragging me out of there. I don't think I ever saw her that mad. She was fit to be tied. As was the norm, I got in a lot of trouble for disobeying, only this time I was really sorry that I did. I was so scared and kept seeing the girl's face and grin in my head every time I closed my eyes. I thought for sure she was going to get loose and come for me. Days after that, we headed back home to the US. Last I heard, the girl had gotten better. No one is sure if the priest coming over and blessing the house every day or the townfolk praying nonstop is what helped her, but they say that a witch, a brujo, was also summoned. His belief was that this was not a demonic possession, but a very strong case of witchcraft / black magic. Apparently this was done to her out of jealousy. She was very pretty and caught the eye of the wrong man. After she got better, she was sent away to live with relatives in the US. I don't know exactly what was wrong with her and how she got better. All I am sure of is that I saw her with my own eyes, saw the condition she was in, and heard the most god-awful noises come out of her, such as I've never heard before. Many years have passed, but this is something that is very clear in my memory. I still remember that face and that smile, and it still scares me to this day. Honestly, I don't think I would be able to live with that image, honestly. Even just reading about it, it sounds absolutely terrifying. And of course, that's something that happens when you disobey your family. I'm pretty sure they said that for a good reason, not just trying to not let you have fun or whatever. I'm pretty sure they didn't want you to not only possibly get possessed yourself, but end up seeing something that you can't unsee, which is exactly what happened, right? Anyway, good story, and I honestly couldn't tell you because I don't really know much about witchcraft or anything or what they are capable of, because I know that there's so many different types of black magic and witchcraft, and there are good witches and bad witches, and one never knows, with that kind of power, or if that power could even be real. But if all of this can exist, you can't doubt that maybe magic can too. Let's go ahead and get into story number 2. Following my paternal grandmother's death after childbirth, my grandfather began moving constantly with his 2 young children to different places, getting new jobs and starting new projects only to leave again sometime later. Sometimes they would go to a new neighborhood or to a nearby city, but some other occasions they would move to a faraway state, oftentimes to places not only remote, but isolated and with barely any basic services. At some point, Grandpa remarried and had 2 more children, Uncles P and B, who are much younger than my father and his brother. Uncle B is older than me by only 3 years. After becoming an adult and starting his own family, my father sometimes would lose contact with Grandpa because they had moved to a place without telephone service. We would get a letter or a postal card letting us know of their latest whereabouts, only to learn time afterwards that they had sold their house and moved somewhere else again. Eventually, Uncle B settled down, but the now married Uncle P and his family, Aunt M and cousins T and LM, and my grandparents stayed together practicing Grandpa's nomadic lifestyle. For the above reasons, my siblings and I didn't really have a chance to spend much time with Grandpa, nor to keep much memories of him. I don't know much about his character other than he was an adventurer and wasn't afraid to undertake any new enterprise. It didn't bother him to start again from zero. I imagine Grandpa was religious at some point in his life, as it would be expected of a bishop's brother-in-law and of a man who had joined the Cristeros army. Grandpa passed away, and several years later in January 1999, Grandma passed away, and several years later in January 1999, Grandpa took his own life. Given the circumstances of his death and the fact that they had to take his body to the coroner's, there was not a vigil held for Grandpa. Uncle P decided that Grandpa's last resting place should be at the side of his late wife. There was a funeral mass, after which they had to take him for burial to a cemetery in a city more than 250 kilometers away from the place where they were living. Shortly after his passing, my mother kept a lit candle and prayed for him. One day, she had to leave the house to run some errands, and to be safe, she placed the candle on the tiled floor of the living room, away from anything that could accidentally start a fire. When she got home and saw the candle, a silent reminder of Grandpa's tragic death, she prayed again, and to her surprise, saw the candle glide gracefully on the floor for at least 2 meters. It is going to be 21 years since Grandpa died, during which I have gone to Mexico several times. I was there last month and I had a good visit with Uncle B and his family. We talk about many topics. At some point, the conversation took us to discuss Grandpa's death, and he told me something that happened to him during the funeral. Like I mentioned before, there was no wake for Grandpa. Still, they had to hire the services of a funeral company and a hearse to transport the casket from the coroner's to the church, and from the church to the cemetery. When the hearse arrived to the church, Uncle B, Cousin T, and 2 men from the funeral company carried the casket toward the building. But when they were crossing the threshold, Uncle B felt like as if the weight the pallbearers were holding had multiplied several times, making almost impossible to keep walking. His first thought was that his body/mind were reacting to the stress of his father's death, and he made his best to prevent his knees from buckling and kept walking into the church. Once inside, the weight of the body and the box went back to normal. At the end of the service, he wondered if this would happen again, but it didn't. He kept the events to himself for a long time, until one day when Cousin T confessed to having experienced the same thing that day at the church. They concluded that Grandpa didn't want to go to church that day. Perhaps he felt regret for having taken his life, or afraid of facing whatever was waiting for him at the other side. Oh my god. A little bit morbid. A little bit sad, because that could have been a possibility, like the whole regrets and everything. I don't know, because the reason he took his own life, I'm guessing, is because the grandma was gone and he maybe didn't see any point in going on. But I feel like I personally wouldn't jump to that conclusion, only because at that point it is just the body in the casket, unless of course his spirit was still there and he somehow didn't want his body to go in there for some reason. Because if there was more than one person, there were 2 different people, unless they were like on the same side of the casket, and for some reason everybody who was holding it on the other side suddenly like wasn't using all their strength anymore, and they were like kind of letting it on the people in the back. Maybe that was the reason why. I don't know, but it's definitely a strange story. Now let's go ahead and get into story number 3. The Mexican Shining. I come from the UK, but this story was when I was on holiday in Cancun, Mexico. This encounter was actually why I came across this site, because I was looking into Mexican spirits. I have previously done stories about a haunted house I live in and a haunted school. I decided I was going to write about my experience in a hotel next. This wasn't as scary to me as my last 2 were. In the hotel, I can't remember the name, there was a toilet in the basement-like area. I only went in there a few times because it gave off some serious bad mojo. It was always cold, even though the weather was like 35 degrees Celsius with no aircon. And I always felt sick and scared when I went in there. I heard disembodied voices, doors rattling, loud bangs, and something fell off, like I wasn't safe. I started using the toilet in the restaurant, but that wasn't much better. It was actually worse. It was cleaner, but I felt like something negative was weighing down on me. It got worse when I started hearing screaming in a deserted cubicle, and then the door slammed. I ran out crying. The holiday itself was amazing, but I didn't feel safe in that hotel. I had nightmares every night, and weird stuff started happening in my room. I heard heavy breathing and knocking noises, as well as getting that paranoid feeling of being watched. It might not sound that scary, but the place had some sort of dark aura. I'm not a psychic or a medium, but something wasn't right. I'm more thankful I didn't see any spirits. I was pretty shook up, and my mom started calling me Haley Joel. In normal circumstances, I would have tried to make contact or something, but I felt like it was poking a bear with a stick. I'm not aware of any deaths, but I wasn't really sure where to search for that info. Just Google it. Google the hotel plus ghost or plus haunted, something like that. I bet you will find something. But very creepy, especially when you go on a trip or like holiday. I feel like your mind is nowhere in that realm of thought, so it's not like you can imagine that stuff up. And I guess maybe what you could guess was the knocking and heavy breathing is somebody getting it on in the next room. That's what I would have thought it was. Honestly, I would have been like, oh my god, these people need to shut up. I'm trying to go to sleep here. But if you already had scary experiences before that in like the bathroom and in the restaurant, of course, you would already be thinking scary thoughts by that point. But anyway, very scary. And I would love to know what hotel that was. It seems like you can't remember the name. Maybe that's why you can't find any more information. Go look up your booking information for when you booked the trip and let us know somewhere. All right, good story there. Now, story number 4 is going to be the last story. I believe what they say about young children and animals seeing things we adults cannot always see. This incident was validation to me that this is true. My dad passed away when my youngest daughter was only 4. They had a really special bond. My dad adored my little girl and spoiled her rotten. She never wanted to leave his side, most of the time preferring to be with him instead of playing with her brother and sister. My daughter was taking ballet at the time, and she would come home from her practice and dance for my dad. He was very patient with her and would applaud her and tell her she was a beautiful ballerina. They would always take their meals together, and she would talk endlessly, often telling him stories of fairies and unicorns she would make up. My dad had a parrot that would talk and do some tricks, but would only do them for him. One of his tricks was that when my dad put his finger out and told him, "Give me your foot," the parrot would put his foot in my dad's finger. He never did it for anyone else, not even my daughter, who was always at my dad's side. The parrot's name was Güero, which translates to blonde. He was named this because he had yellow feathers on his head. I was really concerned for my daughter after my dad passed away, thinking that it was going to be especially hard for her. I was dreading having the talk with her about why she wasn't going to see Daddy Mel anymore. I had already told my 2 oldest and decided I needed to tell her now. It was just me and her in my bedroom, and I started by telling her that I had something to tell her about Daddy Mel. I explained to her that he had to leave to go to a place where he wasn't going to be sick anymore. She interrupted me and said, "Yes, I know. He told me not to be sad." I thought maybe he had talked to her before he had passed, since he had been sick for a while, but then I wasn't so sure. Days following our talk, we started noticing that she would go off on her own and would be laughing and talking to someone. Every time we came in the room, she would stop what she was doing, and when we asked who she was talking to, she would say, "Nobody." We saw her dancing a few times and saying, "Look what I can do," and then bowing to someone we couldn't see. She liked to go in empty rooms to be by herself, and I would have to look for her and bring her out. She also didn't mourn like my other 2 children, which were just a few years older than she was. The other 2 would constantly say they missed Daddy Mel and would be sad, but not my little one. She was as happy as she ever was. One day, I woke up in the middle of the night and needed to use the restroom. On my way there, I noticed there was light coming from downstairs, and I heard someone talking and laughing. I was scared, so I stayed at the top of the stairs listening. I heard my little girl saying, "Oh, Güero, that's not fair. Why will you only give him your foot and not me?" I started to walk really quietly down the stairs and noticed that the parrot had his foot extended like it was resting on something. This made my daughter giggle and clap. Then Güero started dancing. He would walk up and down, bobbing his head back and forth, something he would only do at my dad's request. What I felt next was so overwhelming. I ran back upstairs and buried my face in my pillow and cried my eyes out. Part of me was scared even though I knew that she was seeing and talking to my dad. I also felt like I didn't want to intrude. I remember I fell asleep. I didn't go get her and I didn't see her until the morning. I was debating on what to tell her. I was afraid of what she was going to tell me she was seeing. I finally got the nerve to talk to her a few days later. I asked her who she and Güero were playing with the other day. She looked at me and said, "I don't know." So I let her be. It kept bugging me and I was constantly following her around the house and watching her every move. Finally, one day I asked her about it again and she said, "He doesn't come anymore." I asked her, "Who?" And she replied, "No one. Can I go play now?" I never got a straight answer from her. Güero stopped eating, and about 2 months after my dad passed away, we found him dead in his cage. All 3 of my children cried non-stop for the parrot. Oh, I never really liked Güero. He was loud, mean, and obnoxious, but I still cry when I remember him. To me, it was the one thing from my father that was gone. Oh my god, that's so sad. Oh my god. Look, this story was super sad, but at the same time, like, kind of unnerving, even if it was your dad. That's the thing about, like, seeing family members who have passed away. It's like, of course it's like heartwarming and you kind of want to be happy about the fact that they're saying their last goodbye or spending like a few more moments with you, even if it is in spirit. But it's still terrifying, right? Because I mean, you never really truly know who you're speaking to when it comes to spirits. And of course, as the user said earlier, there are things that children and animals can see. I guess because they have a more innocent spirit that other people don't anymore, to a certain degree. So this was sad, but also kind of scary because she wouldn't say who she was talking to. Because I feel like it wouldn't make sense for the dad or the grandpa to tell her not to tell anybody who she was talking to, unless she kind of wanted to keep it to herself for whatever reason. But I mean, she's like 4 years old. Like, I feel like kids like that don't think that far ahead, and she would just be straight up with you, unless she, being a little kid, like, you know, she gets sidetracked. She just wants to move on to the next thing. Because from what the couple of times that the user asked her like who she was talking to, she went from being like, "Oh, like, I'm just doing this," or being like, "I don't know, can I go play now, or can I go do this," and not giving her a straight answer. I feel like it's just because a child's mind is just on constant like go mode that she didn't want to have that conversation at that point. Maybe it had to be like one of those things where she had to talk to her about it like during bedtime, like when she's settling down and getting sleepy. That way she would cooperate in answering these questions. But yeah, it's super sad about the little parrot. Either way, like, even if he was a little bad bird, it makes sense that it would still hurt, because I mean, that was her dad's bird, and the last thing that was like a living part of her dad. That's so sad. That truly, genuinely made me sad. And the fact that the kids were super sad as well. And at the same time, I'm guessing that after she had told the little girl, the daughter, had told the mom that the grandpa wasn't coming around anymore, I feel like the bird probably got depressed after the presence of him was completely gone. Because I know that they're intellectual, like emotionally intellectual as well. So sad, but really good story. Even though it was a sad one, all the things that happened, the things that you experienced, were eerie and spooky and heartwarming all in one. Very impactful story. I really enjoyed that. And that is going to be the last video, you guys. I don't have a lot of time today to film, and I also didn't charge my camera enough, and I didn't bring a spare battery, so I'm literally just taking L's. But I hope that you still enjoyed these few stories, even though I didn't give you guys 10 stories like I did last time. Did I do 10? Damn, I can't remember. I think I did some big number like that, something crazy. I don't want you guys to get greedy now. I'm just kidding. But yeah, I'm literally just trying to make this a shorter video only because of those two factors that I just mentioned right now. But if you did make it all the way to this point in the video, thank you so much, first of all. And also leave a little parrot emoji in your comment. That way I know who stayed all the way to the end. And if you did, just know that I really appreciate it. And me and you are besties as always. Forever besties, me and you. And also, before I do end today's video, today's comment shout out goes to this person right here. Thank you so much for leaving a nice comment. As always, I truly do appreciate it, and it really makes my day. And if you want to be the next comment shout out, all you have to do is leave me a nice comment down below, and that's it. Yeah guys, hopefully I will see you in my next video. Don't forget to stay safe and be kind. Bye.